What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another Battlefront 2 video. Today we are covering Vader in our Heroes and Villains guide, and before I even start, honestly, I'm expecting this video to get the least amount of action. I'm talking likes, dislikes, views, just in general, because Vader is incredibly easy to use. So if you are a first-time Battlefront player and you finally get the chance to pick a hero, get with Vader. He's very, I don't even know what other words to use. Easy is really the best word. He is overpowered, I think, which, as he should be. He is the chosen one at peak form on the dark side. His abilities are all very, very well tuned for who he is, and also his abilities being easy to use. His chokehold can chokehold a ridiculous number of enemies at one time, and it brings those enemies all into one little area. So like if he'll chokehold two people, one far to the right, one far to the left, it brings them both dead center of where he chokeholded, and then you can easily dash forward and slash them. His Saber ability can travel pretty far on its own, and then there's star cards that allow you to send it even further. There's ones that increase the damage that it does. His Furious Rage is that middle ability. That one allows him to take less oncoming damage. Like, the damage he takes is less damaging towards his health, and he deals more damage with his abilities and his lightsaber slash. So all around, Vader is just a very, very good villain to play as. So if you don't quite know the game that well yet and are just looking to start out as maybe someone to help you learn that game, this is definitely who you want to be picking right from the get-go. This first ability just allows Vader to have a increased damage reduction when he's got his middle ability active, so it just makes him a better, well-around character. Now, I'm not going to say that I prefer to have him have this star card under Heroes vs. Villains or Supremacy, because quite honestly, there's only 3 star cards that I use with him now, and that's just because of the way that I play as Vader. However, I'm not saying any of these star cards are bad. In fact, this video is probably going to take a little longer than the rest of them, because I don't think there's a single star card that would be bad to use as Vader. You just need to figure out what abilities you use the most and what you end up needing as Vader. For me, I run out of stamina very fast when I'm Vader, so I have a star card that increases his maximum health. I always think that's a good one. I have the increased melee deflection. Like, you have more stamina when you're deflecting saber slashes and blaster deflections. And then the last one I pick is the one that gives you 25% of your stamina back every time you get a kill. That one I actually do recommend mostly for the Supremacy and even Galactic Assault game modes, but for me it's the stamina cards plus increased maximum health. It may be different for you, but that's why I'm going to go over pretty much every single star card for Vader. Now, this one is actually the only one that I just don't think is really worth it because of how great all the other star cards are, but basically you can have a longer duration of your Fueling the Rage, which is that middle ability, for a damage reduction of 6 once you max it out all the way. Now, I personally just don't like it because you're reducing damage for a slightly longer ability time, and I personally don't think you need that extra time to begin with, because you already have 2 aggressive abilities, your Saber Throw and your Chokehold, so I don't really think the Furious Rage needs to be extended by any more at all. Now, here's a star card where I think it'd be great in any of the game modes, Heroes vs. Villains or Supremacy. Game modes kind of like that, where basically if you chokehold 2 or more enemies, you gain extra damage during that chokehold. So not like you don't receive extra damage, but you deal extra damage to the people you're choking. Heroes vs. Villains, there's usually 4 people that you're playing against, so you can easily grab 2 of them in your chokehold. And same thing in Supremacy, you're playing against tons of people, so it's easy to get this one done. And yet another star card that can be used in both game modes. There is no escape. Saber Throw actually travels further. Now, I personally think it already travels a decent distance, so I don't use this one as much as I used to. However, I did use it at one point, and it was very, very useful. So this is one where I, again, I just can't see someone going wrong by putting this one on, unless you're the type of player that just doesn't use Saber Throw all that often. I will say that Saber Throw is a ability that recharges faster than Chokehold. I think it actually recharges a whole 2/3 faster than Chokehold. So you can use your Saber Throw 3 times for every 1 time that you can use Chokehold. That is a solid difference. I mean, you'll see in this clip above that my Chokehold is recharging most of the time, but it's also one of my go-to abilities. Vader's very good with his Chokehold, but this is the extra distance for your lightsaber throw. I do think it is a worthwhile card to use. Look, you already know how I feel about bonus health. It's always worth it. Definitely a move. So moving on to Surrounded by Fear, which is a new personal favorite where you basically gain stamina every time you kill an enemy. So that's one of the cards that I actually have on right now when I play the game, and it's definitely more of a Supremacy and Galactic Assault game mode, but it can be useful in Heroes vs. Villains because a lot of the time I'm going on score streaks, well, I guess I should say kill streaks, because Vader's just so good. Like he's got so much health and can deal so much damage that you can be killing entire teams in Heroes vs. Villains. So it's quite honestly a move in just about any game mode. So increased deflection stamina is honestly another great card for pretty much any game mode. I guess it's a little less for Heroes vs. Villains because you find a lot more Saber heroes. I actually was under the impression that it did increase your deflection stamina for Saber Strike. So if like a Luke is attacking you with his lightsaber, I thought it increased the amount you could block him, but it's only the amount that someone is shooting at you. So it is very, very useful in trooper-based game modes. A little less useful in Heroes vs. Villains, but still useful because you've got Han, Leia, Chewbacca, Finn. You got a solid bit of trooper-based heroes that have blasters instead of sabers. So definitely worth considering. This being the last card that I'll cover, Intensified Lightsaber Throw allows you to get additional damage to enemies that are hit a second time by this. So if it hits them on the way out and on the way back, they get an additional 30 damage dealt. But seeing as most enemies get 1 hit if they're hit with it both times, like if you throw it and it hits them and then it comes back and hits them again, most of the time, at least the trooper-based ones, they will die from that alone. The only time that extra 30 health really comes into play is if you're against specialists with extra health, heroes with extra health, or in some cases heavies. For some reason heavies, it's hit or miss. Sometimes that card will always one-hit heavies, but sometimes when you don't have that card on, you can one-hit heavies. Maybe they're missing like a minuscule amount of damage or health and you can't tell, or maybe it won't kill them sometimes because they're boosted by an officer or a friendly nearby. I've never been able to tell the difference, but usually if I hit them once on the way out and once on the way back, it will insta-kill all of the troopers, even the heavies. So that is one thing to keep in mind. If you're using that card, usually you want to stick with a Heroes vs. Villains or just some sort of game mode where you will be facing mostly heavy health opponents. People with specialists, such as the Enforcer class or even the Jetpack class will have extra health, so they would count towards that. But most of the time, it's not really a card that I use. But again, it's not one that's bad by any means. It increases his damage for a already crazy good ability. So definitely one to consider, but maybe not one to try out from the very start. Once you've fully maxed out Vader and have all of his cards, then that's one that you might want to experiment with. But this next part of this video, I want to just kind of talk about strategies with Vader. I know he's a very easy villain to use, but you want to, with any sabered villain or hero, your only weakness is behind you, because if there's someone in front of you, you can just block them. With the exception of Grievous and having absolutely no blocking stamina at all, you want to keep them in front of you, and that way you can not just use your abilities on them, but you can also deflect any sort of oncoming damage with the exception of explosive damage. And then you also want to look for choke points. Places like me and Palpatine are right now, that's a choke point where it's just one place that the enemies can come through and they've got to get through us to advance any further. Now there is another entrance on this map, but that's the kind of point I'm trying to make. You want to find the area that's smallest. The other entrance is a lot larger and it's a little bit harder to keep the enemies in front of you. You'll notice I'm staying back and waiting for them to come to me a little bit, because right here I'm being a little bit more aggressive, and in doing that I allowed one of them to get behind me and just unload their blaster into me. So I did end up getting that health back, which is great, but you want to try and avoid being too aggressive. And that goes for everyone, not just Vader. That goes for Luke, Maul, freaking Dooku. I mean, just anyone that's got a lightsaber that can deflect blasters and other projectiles. Other than that, I think I've really covered pretty much everything for Vader. If there is anything I missed, or if you wanted me to answer any questions for me, leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to get back with a reasonable amount of time. And I think that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, don't forget to smack the like button and subscribe if you're not already. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.